Today we're talking about Budgeting 101, and I'm joined by Tom Cravens. Tom is a successful businessman, banking experience. He's a real icon in the Arlington community and has quite a bit of experience working with money. And so, Tom, it's great to have you with us today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Derek. You have been a great Rotarian. You've been a great citizen of Arlington. You've done a lot of things for everybody in this town, and we really appreciate it. Your smiling face is always welcome.
Well, thank you very much. Coming from you, that means a lot, Tom. I appreciate it. And well, for each of you watching, I think you're in for a treat. So let's talk about Budgeting 101. So, Tom, let's go right to the bottom line here. What is a budget, and why does a person need a budget?
Well, a budget is just a financial aid that people can start, write it down on paper, and it's a plan to spend your money for a defined period of time, usually a year for an individual. Some companies do them for a year, 5 years. They have long-term budgets. Sometimes those budgets work out, sometimes they don't. But a one-year budget generally can work out. And what you do is you put down the money that you take in, either your salary, your day work, whatever you get, and then you put down what you need for your life. How do you spend your money for your life? Just such things as childcare. How much do you need for childcare? Write it down. How much do you need for housing? If you've got rent, what it is, a mortgage payment, put that down. What about food? You got to spend so much money for food each month, and then you spread that over a year. You know what you'll need. Your transportation. If you got a car, if you got insurance for the car, you got a payment on the car if you have a payment. So put that in your budget. Write all these figures down. And either other such as entertainment if you need to, or other such as a vacation if you wanted to go on one, or if you've got kids, you might want to put some money back for education for them for later. You have a savings that you have, and you try to put money in savings that it's kind of your emergency fund. If something happened, if your car broke down, all these kind of things, you put some of this in this budget for those kind of air conditioning in your house breaks down. There's something in the plumbing that goes. You've got to have an emergency fund for a house, and all those kind of things that they come up. And then of course you got to have taxes. So put that in your budget too. So you're going down childcare, medical, transportation, emergency fund, savings, other taxes, and food. Is get it all down. And then when you get it down, you see what you spend. You've got a plan there, and then you see what you take in. You might have to tweak your budget because you don't take in quite as much as you spend, and
Right.
You don't want to be like the U.S. government and spend a whole lot more than you take in, like we're doing right now. So each household has to have a balanced budget, in my opinion. And like Dave Ramsey says, and Dave Ramsey is a radio host that talks a lot about budgeting, a lot about getting out of debt, and debt is not good. If you can avoid debt, that's fine. So anyway, that's kind of what a budget really is. The money that you have coming in, the money that you have going out, you got to balance at the end of each month, at the end of each year.
That's a great description, Tom. And what I heard you say was it's not just wandering through the month and you spend money and you wonder how much you'll be left with at the end of the month. You have a written plan and you're following the plan, much like a plan for a job or your kid's school. They get a report card. There's a way to track what you're doing.
Absolutely. You're exactly right. It's just a track, an individual. It's very simple. You can write it down on a piece of scratch paper if you want to. It doesn't have to be in the computer. It doesn't have to be something that is very, tough to figure out each month. It's just what you spend, what you have.
What about, let's say that somebody does that. They write down, here's what they spend, here's what their income is. And then after a month or so, they realize, oh my goodness, I'm spending quite a bit more than I'm bringing in. What do you suggest they do in terms of how to modify that? What are some steps they can take?
Well, don't spend money on things that you just feel good by spending it.
Yes.
You spend the things that you really need to live. Your housing, your transportation, healthcare, that kind of thing is what you really spend. There's other kind of things that you see a new TV on television and you decide you want one. Costco's got one, you want to go down and get it. All these kind of things that just all of a sudden come up and you think, I'm going to do that. I'll pay for it later. You put it on my credit card, something else. It won't work that way. You've got to spend what you have coming in. So you've got to tweak your budget to down to what you really have coming in. If it's entertainment you had down there and you're not having enough to come in, entertainment you can cut out. Some of those things that you need to, if you're a member of a physical workout club or something, cut that out. All kinds of things you can cut out, but don't cut out the necessary things and just spend money on what's necessary. If you don't have enough, you've got to have a balanced budget.
Yes. And what I've heard you say, it comes down to tough choices, that if you really want to take control of your money, it comes down to you taking control of your impulses and saying no to some things that you may want now so that you can get something maybe better down the road.
Right. You said it is better than I said it, but that's what I was trying to say.
Okay.
Don't go spend that impulsive things about there's a new car that I'd like to get or a used car I'd like to get, but my other one's running okay. Don't go get it until you have money to pay cash for it in your emergency fund or wherever you build money up to pay the cash for it. Debt is not good.
Yes. Well, it's interesting because growing up, I had an epiphany one day that we would go to Chick-fil-A quite a bit to eat as our family. And my kids would see dad take out this little square piece of plastic and give it to people. They would give them food. And my kids began to think, oh, there's just this magic square that you give it to people and you get stuff. And I said, you realize this is a credit card and they're going to send me a bill. They keep track of everything I spend. They're going to ask me to pay for it at the end of the month. They're like, really? I said, yeah. So every time you use that card, ask yourself, do I have enough money already in the bank to pay it off at the end of each month? That way you're always thinking ahead and asking yourself, is it really worth it?
Absolutely. A credit card is, most people have one now, and it's for convenience. And the convenience is so you don't have to carry a lot of cash around with you. But here again, it's got to be part of your budget, and you spend it on things that are in your budget. And at the end of the month, you pay that credit card off. You don't keep rolling it over saying, well, I'll pay the minimum, and next month I'll catch up with it. You don't catch up with it. Mm-hmm. You can't catch up at 22% interest what credit cards cost you. You will not catch up.
Right.
Just don't keep adding to the end of that balance by paying the minimum each month. Don't do it.
Good advice. Now, let me kind of shift gears a bit. Explain for our viewers how a savings and a checking account works and how much money should a person keep in each of those accounts?
Well, a savings account is not a transactional account. In other words, a checking account, you write checks on it, you have transactions, you can write as many checks as you want according to the bank's policy. But a savings account is a non-transactional account. You put your money that you want to save for college, you put your money that you want to save for your emergency fund, you put the money that you might want to have for the end of the year. If you want to go on a vacation, you put that money in there in the savings account. It earns a little interest, and these days it doesn't earn a lot of interest, but it at least you put it in a place where you can get to it if you need it. And that's where you put your emergency money, is put it in that emergency fund. And the checking account is just used for everyday writing checks to pay your bills, your utilities, and whatever. And quite honestly, checking accounts are one of the things that's kind of going out of business right now because so many people are paying online. So many people are using a debit card instead of a credit card. The debit card means that it's coming directly out of your account. It doesn't go, you don't have to pay it at the end of the month. It's coming out. If it's in there, it's coming out. That's not a bad way to spend your money, is through a debit card, not a credit card. A credit card sometimes gives you the false sense of security, which a debit card is reality. It's out and it's gone.
Right. So let's say that someone watching has never set up a checking or savings account. What should they do and where should they go to get those things set up?
Well, basically the banks have checking and savings account. You make sure your credit is worthy before you go in and try to open a checking account at a bank. If you've had some closed because you've had bad checks before, you're going to have somewhat of trouble opening a checking account until you can get it secured by somebody else or a co-signer on the account, until you can prove yourself that you can handle a checking account. The banks just don't automatically, you walk in, open the account. You've got to have fairly good credit, and you've got to have, if you don't, you've got to have somebody to sign for you to make sure that you pay that. And then at the end of the year, if you paid and there are no return checks, that kind of thing, then you can get it on your own and you can release the cosigner, but it's not as easy as it used to be, Derek, to get a checking account. They pretty well, go through and check your background just like an apartment does. If you go rent an apartment, they don't just say, okay, rent the apartment. They run a credit check. Credit is a major factor in today's living.
That's good to know. And let's say a person listening has credit card debt or student loan debt. How would you recommend they go about paying down that debt?
If the credit card debt is high enough to where just cut up the credit card, number one,
Okay.
and start putting in your budget to pay the credit card off. And don't use credit. Use your cash to what you need. Don't get that false sense that you can use the credit card to take care of the wants that you have that you really don't need. Cut it up. Student debt is another real issue. As you know, student debt is just ballooned amazingly in the last 10 years that I remember. It's just gotten really out of hand. And there's a lot of kids that can go through college or get your college degree with very little student debt by working a couple of jobs, going to night school and going to online school, doing that kind of thing to get your education, and not going to a school and get an education that won't really provide for you at the end of at the end you get a degree, but you got a huge debt. And
Right.
not every student, not every person needs to go to a university. The Dan Dipert Center, for instance, in Arlington, that's a vocational center that teaches how to weld, teaches you how to, hairdressing, all kinds of things. There are ways that you can make money that you don't need to spend a lot of money going to college if you don't have it. And if you're not, a lot of kids don't want to go to college. They want to get a job and go out. And these vocational schools are fantastic to get that done, especially in high school or junior colleges.
Such a good idea. Let's say that somebody has one credit card that's charging them 22%. Another, let's say it's charging them, 4 or 5%. Some people say pay off the higher interest rate card first. Other people say just pay off the lowest balance. Where do you land on that, Tom? What practical advice would you have on that?
Well, you pay off the highest interest card first.
Okay.
Even if you have to borrow against the low interest card to pay off the high interest card, then you got a 4% loan instead of a 15 or 20% loan, as you know. So that's just a way you can do it. And then once you get it all consolidated into that one credit card, then, very sparingly use the credit card, but start paying it down.
Yeah, good advice. So let's say a person watching doesn't get a regular paycheck. They've got a part-time job. How should they go about budgeting when their income may be a little bit more unpredictable?
Well, a budget still, you budget for the year. You budget for what you need for the year. You put it all down. What are you going to spend a month? And then for instance, let's say you sell air conditioning units. You're going to sell those in probably March, April for the summer, and you got a lot of money coming in, and you'll think, boy, I'm rich, when everybody pays their bill in June, and you can spend the money and go on vacation, do all these kind of things. You got to budget that over the year. And then the heating season comes up, and their heater needs to be turned on in October, November, December, and you get a lot more money coming in there. So you got 6 months of money coming in, you got 12 months of money going out. So budget it to like you've got 12 months coming in and 12 months going out, and don't bunch it all together and think that you're going to be rich those 3 months and spend it all.
How often should a person review their budget? Should this be something they look at each week, each month? What do you recommend that can provide a way for people to better track how they're doing?
Well, I think you need to look at it each month. I think you need to look at the money that you're spending, the money that you have in the bank, the money that's going out, the money that's coming in, and see if you're getting off your budget. See if you're saying, oh, I thought I could do that in entertainment, but you shouldn't have done it. And then the next month, you're not going to do it. So yeah, monthly, I think you need to do it monthly. When you get the checking account balance coming in, if you have a checking account, or, that's the time to do it. When you balance your checkbook, balance your budget.
Yeah. Well, so what I'm hearing you say, Tom, is that many people, I think that money is something they really have little control over. But what I'm hearing you say is, look, you can check in on it every month, see how you're doing, and then make course corrections along the way. Much like if you were going on a trip and you may get off on the wrong exit. Well, you don't just scrap the whole trip. You say, let's stop, let's get back on the road again. And that's what people are really doing each month by doing what you're suggesting.
Yeah. Siri tells you to turn around.
Right.
in your car. And so, yeah, on a budget, you need to, turn around. If you're spending too much, you just need to tweak it and go back and start over. They're not easy. For a husband and wife, it's especially difficult. If the wife wants to spend, the husband wants to spend, there's some conflict there that may happen, but they've got to both be in this together. They cannot one of them be on and one of them be off. It won't work that way. You've got to be in them together.
Yeah, that's such a great point that many spouses, one may be the saver, one the spender, one may want to take care of the day-to-day budget, one may want to look at the long-term investing. So let's talk about, even as a couple, what are some ways, you talked about this earlier, but to go a little bit deeper, Tom, how does a person decide what they should spend money on and then what they should not spend money on?
They sit down at a meal without their phones, without the television. They get their yellow pad out and they go through their budget if that's what it's on, or their computer if that's what it's on, and come to agreement. Each one of them agree on what they're going to do, and then hold each one accountable for what you've decided you're going to do for the year, for the month, or for the week, whatever. But sitting down and talking to each other without the television, without your phone, is a big deal. And have one meal a day. At least you sit down with the husband and wife and the kids sometime, but mainly the husband and wife to do the budget, and the kids just to have a conversation with them at the end of each day.
Yes. What I take away from that, Tom, and you're someone I've admired for a long time, not just how you manage your money, but how you manage your family. What you just described, in today's society, things are so busy, but for kids or grandkids to hear a conversation about money from their parents or grandparents is so powerful, because they realize, okay, this is very real. Everybody works on this. It's very common. So many people without those discussions go through their life and have never had that. And it makes it a bigger struggle, I think.
That's right. It's like your kids, that little magic card, the money just appears. Tell them the money does not appear. You've got it. Here's where it is and where's where it comes from. And start doing that at an early age. I mean, it's have the family discussions, which is sometimes hard to do these days with parents working two jobs and not everybody together at one time. But you, on a Sunday or something like that, you can get together and everybody have a family meeting about the budget and spending, and how'd you do this week? What'd you do this week? What are you gonna do next week? And try to put it all together in one sitting, at least once a week.
Yes, such a great idea. Now, we know that life happens. Even the best laid plans can go awry. What if a person has overspent and then something unexpected happens that they have to pay for? Should they use a credit card or look into other options? What do you suggest?
If their budget was done properly, they're going to have an emergency fund, Derek.
Yes,
and
yes.
that they can use the money out of the emergency fund. And that's the beauty of the budget. It sets up for, things that you may not have planned in your budget, but it's called the emergency fund. Use it out of there. The last thing you want to do is use it out of your credit card, but if you have to, and it's a real critical matter, yes, do it, but then put it back in the budget to pay it off as soon as you can.
That's good. So let's say for many of our viewers that they find budgeting to be hard. It's something they've never done before. What are some ways that people watching can stay motivated to begin this process and keep after it?
When I was thinking about that, and life is hard.
Yes.
Life is not easy. Keeping a budget is hard. It's not easy. But that's just as life is hard, the budget is hard, but both of them are very instrumental in getting the point to where you can have a better life at the end rather than trying to just struggle your whole life. So, you've got to stick to the budget, put it down, everybody agree to it, and work on it, because it just doesn't happen. It takes work from the whole family, the whole person, each person, family, wife, whatever.
And Tom, let me go back to us from a self-confidence standpoint. Some of people watching may feel like, look, I'm not good with money. I've always made money mistakes. My parents weren't good with money. I'm just not meant to be good with money. What do you say to them to sort of press that reset button to encourage them to say, look, whatever's happened in the past doesn't have to predict what your future may be?
I think you said it perfectly. Whatever happened in the past, doesn't determine what your future is going to be. At some point, you've got to make the decision, your own decision, to put a budget in place, put a budget where you can live with it. Don't overspend. Try not to get into debt, and just recalculate your life, reinvent the way that you can keep your money safe from spending on things that you really don't need. And once you do that, then later on, after education, the kids are gone, you'll have a nice retirement and you can live happily ever after, so to speak. That's what everybody dreams about, but it's not, life is hard. You've just got to stay with it.
Yes. Well, and like you said, money is such a key part of our lives that do you find that when you have a solid budget and something that's in place, how does it positively affect other parts of your life?
Well, other parts of your life is that you have money to educate your kids, you have money for retirement, you have money in your emergency account in case something does come up. You can take care of it without having to panic, without having to go borrow money from mother or father or friend or somebody else, or overspend your credit card. If you get those things done, that gives you a better way of life, and it just tends to smooth out once you get the budget going under control and spending within your budget.
Yes. One of the big takeaways, I think, in our time together, Tom, is that so many people look at successful people that they must have a secret. There must be something that they have other people don't. But oftentimes it comes down to the basics of, much like when you build a house, you put a foundation in place that's strong. And often that foundation is the budget to make sure that you can build on that. So Tom Cravens, successful businessman, Rotarian for a long time, a community servant. Thank you for your time today. I think you've helped a lot of people start and improve their budgeting. I appreciate your time today.
Derek, thank you. I appreciate all you do.
Thank you.